Fantastic. Right, it's 6:05, everybody, on the 13th of July, and we're all here, primed and ready to hear from the lovely Martin Russ, who is a huge part of the Suffolk tech community, as well as being a digital musician. He is on the ISTN board. The ISTN board is made up, we're massive, there's like 20 of us, but deliberately, because what we look at tech plus education and digital plus education, and we're of a mind that that's quite a broad subject, so there's quite a few of us, and we have lots of different subcategories around community, around education, around women in technology and diversity, etc. So it's worth signing up to the ISTN. I popped the link in the chat earlier on. You can sign up for updates in general, but also we run, at the moment, we think we're up to 5 events plus 2 pub events, one every second week. And we're looking to get another 4 events added onto that. So they will all be tech talks. They will all be open to all and free to attend. And they will also have some sort of monthly agenda. So that's quite a lot of free tech education if you're interested. So sign up for updates. This evening, we've got Martin, who is giving a talk, how does one person in a computer replace an orchestra? Anyone who knows Martin knows that this is a massive passion for him. And so I'm going to pass over to Martin now. I don't know if we're going to get to see his face. I'll be surprised. I have met him in the flesh, so I do know he exists. Otherwise, I think if I only had an online relationship with him, I'm not sure I would believe it. But Martin, are you there?
I'm here.
You're there. There we go. I'm going to pass over to Martin, and I should be quiet.
Thank you. Right. I need to share screens and things because we're going to do various things here. So let me share the screen. Right. Okay. So you should be seeing a screen with a couple of windows in it, and I'm going to play a video. The best way to do this is for you to all close your eyes until I tell you to open them. So if I press play, no, I'm going to restart. Right. Okay, you can open your eyes if you want. And I'm going to fade it out there as the strings get going. Okay. So what you've just listened to is not a recording of an orchestra. It's a piece of music produced by someone who works for a company called Spitfire Audio. You can see Spitfire Audio right at the top of the screen there. And what Spitfire Audio do is they make effectively what are virtual orchestras of various types. And each virtual orchestra is made up of virtual instruments. And so everything that you heard was ultimately a recording of an instrument and recorded all the notes that it can make at various intonations, at various volumes, etc., etc. So everything about the way that that instrument makes a sound is captured, turned into this thing called a virtual instrument, and those are the things that were producing everything that you were hearing. And so on the screen, there's various diagrams and various things with what look like bits off of piano roll or something, and those are all things that are determining what all of those virtual instruments are doing. Curiously enough, this is the sort of thing that is used an awful lot for producing a lot of the music that you hear for TV, for movies, etc., games, all of those things. So let me put this away. Right. The sort of thing that you can use, we've just looked at one way of actually producing something. This is another way. And the first thing that people always say when they see something like this is, oh my goodness. And so, yes, it does look complicated, but it only looks complicated because there's a lot of things that are repeated and etc. So if you can see my mouse is moving up and down along a thing that's actually just a single tape recorder, effectively, that can play back stuff. You can see there that there's this meter that's busy showing something. If
Martin,
we listen to that, yeah.
Apologies. I don't know about others. I'm just still seeing the Spitfire audio frozen screen there.
You are. Ah, okay. How do I change it so that it does that?
Come back out and go back in again.
Okay, how about that?
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. Great.
Right, it doesn't follow the sharing. Right, so here's this thing I was talking about, thing that goes up when I move up and down it, that's repeated here, repeated here. So effectively these are 4 things that can happen, and I can add extra things, and then there's stuff over on the right that we'll ignore for the moment. What this is doing is it's making a noise. So if we listen to it, that noise is that peak that you can hear there. What you've got here is low frequencies down on the left, high frequencies is up on the right, and the thing we're listening to is there in the middle. So before you all go mad, let's reduce the volume. What's producing that is this thing down here at the bottom. This is something that I produced. It's a piece of software, and it generates sound, but the way it generates sound is very unusual. There are 32 separate things that can all produce any frequency you like. And so what you see here, the orange row of dots there, is all at the low end at the moment because it's producing that low frequency there, which is a few hundred hertz. And what I can do is I can control the way that things happen. So if I adjust some of these, oops, that's a bit too loud. Right, so now you see that the sound has moved up. If I move this one, and move this one down, it's starting to make strange up and down noises. You can see that the orange bits have got things where they're going up and down. What this means is that each of those 32 sound generators is making a different frequency, because frequency is on that vertical axis. And if we look on the spectrum here, you can see that there's something that's going down in very low frequency. Now it's bouncing up again, and there's various other things going up and down and making all of that weird sort of noise. If I lift the high limit, it all moves upwards. You can see here we've got a range there. Let's increase the range a bit more, and I'll open the damping up. So now we're making Forbidden Planet style noises, all driven by this. So what you've got here is a very quick and easy way to produce lots of different sounds and have lots of control over them with a very small number of controls. So let's leave that alone. In the real world, and I'm going to have to change to a different share, aren't I? Where's my Oh, it's there. Right. I'm going to jump to another screen. And on this screen, oh, if I could see, because everything's hidden. Right. Right. So here's the, can you see a screen with a lot of wires on it?
Yeah,
Yep.
we've got that now.
Cool. Right. So this is the hardware equivalent. That thing on the right, those two boxes with all those lights and wires on, that's the hardware equivalent of that little window that I had showing in the bottom right, sorry, bottom left only a few minutes ago. So the hardware one is slightly more sophisticated and makes lots more noises, but essentially it's a way of doing the sort of things I was just doing, but in hardware. And so it just gives you control over frequencies, where those frequencies are, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can control all sorts of things relatively straightforwardly, except someone who looks at that says, but there are all those cables and things, and it's complicated. Yeah. So what the thing that I was using is another of those virtual instruments. So it's a bit of software that makes sounds. In this case, it's making all these sounds the way you can put any frequency you like anywhere on the frequency spectrum from low to high. You can change it, make it move up and down, et cetera, et cetera. The sort of virtual instruments that you have when you're making music like the orchestral stuff that we started with, you don't have something that's just making frequencies like that, where they're just sweeping up and down. Instead, you have effectively a recording of an instrument, different notes, different volumes, different ways of intonation, etc., etc. But these are two different ways of looking at a virtual instrument. So I'm now going to go back to that workstation and we'll look at this in a bit more depth. So where are we? Right, I need to find how to get my sharing. Nope, don't want to do that. Right. Right, I need a new share. I need to go back to there. Right. Okay, you should now be seeing the thing that was making all that noise. Yeah. No one's telling me anything.
It is.
Cool.
Well, it's kind of popped down to a lower resolution for me, but I can still make it out.
Oh, right. It'll eventually catch up, hopefully. Okay. Right. So what I'm going to do now is load in something else, and we're going to look at different types of virtual instruments. But you need to remember what we've just been looking at, because I'll quiz you on that later. So you remember I said that each of these verticals can have things in it? Well, here, one of them, if you can see, is slightly lighter, and this number 1 is lit up, and this is where the first thing that we do is going to happen. In there, I've got a particular sound, so let's tweak my display so that I can actually run it. Right, okay. Right, let's not make it too loud. So you should be hearing a sound. It's playing 2 notes. It's playing a C and an A. And you can see at the bottom of the screen here on this piano roll, those 2 notes. So here, over the 2 bars that we've got is just playing that. So this is another of these virtual instruments. This one's just making that sound. It's a synthesized version of that. It's not a pre-done recording. What I'm now going to do is turn on another channel and we'll get 2 things at once. That can frighten you with what that looks like in the piano roll. So pitch goes up vertically, goes down as you move downwards. The notes, the longer they are, the longer they sound. Because we're pushing the bandwidth of the broadband, you're probably going to get some distortion and so on. That's just Zoom not coping with things. So that's two things happening at once. Let's add in something else. So you should now be hearing something that's a high frequency bit, which is there. And let's add in some percussion. I'm going to show you all of the 4 bars. So you can see the percussion starts out very simple and gets very complicated. The percussion is one of these virtual instruments that's just recordings of real instruments. So if we can look at a virtual instrument, it's this thing here on the bottom left. Not very interesting. If we open it up though, this is what it really looks like. So this one comes from Spitfire Audio, who are the people who did that thing at the beginning. There are other people who make virtual instruments as well. And this is just cinematic percussion. So it does sort of percussion sounds that you have in movies and things. There are lots of other different types of instruments that you can have. It's just that this is a good one for doing that sort of percussion. Oops, let's go away. Let's put the other stuff back. All right, yes, let me just turn these off. No, I'll leave just that one. Right. So what you can see here is that by turning things on and off, I can arrange what's going on. So I'm effectively in the role of a conductor. So if we look at the piano roll, one of these things, then that's where the composer would sit, putting the notes in. Above it, here, where I've got these sliders and turning channels on and off, that's effectively arrangement. I've only got 2 things happening at the moment. I can control the level and so on of things. If I add in another one, so let's go down here. So what we've got there when it plays. So why is it not?
Martin, can you turn
Yes.
it up at all?
Can I what?
Turn it up a little bit. I think it's
Yeah.
a bit faint for some people.
All right, okay. Can you still hear me over the top of it?
Yes.
Right, cool. So there, what I'm doing is I'm playing tubular bells over the top of it. That's another recording. It's another virtual instrument. So if we go and look at that one, it's going to look astonishingly different. There. So this is something where it's not just cinematic percussion. This is a complete orchestra. So it's laid out exactly as you'd expect an orchestra to be. So over here, you've got horns, violins, cellos, double basses, various other things, percussion at the back, etc. Tunes, percussion, and so on. Tubular bells. Let's click on that one again. We should be back to where we were. Yeah, back to the tubular bells. So using several of these, you've got a complete orchestra at your fingertips. And this is a very simple one. There are ones which are much more complicated. Let's move down to here. Right. Did you hear the gong? So right at the very end, there's now a gong. So end of each time the loop repeats, you get a gong. let's look at adding something else more interesting in. Let's go to here. So this is from the right-hand side of the orchestra. So if we go back to that view, so that's over here. So that's pizzicato basses. Remove one down. In fact, that gong is a bit silly, so I'll remove it. Oh, didn't it? Meant to do it. Right, so what I've added in here is the double basses. So right at the very back on the right, you've got the double basses. Solo them. You really get the sense there that that's a recording of a guy actually scraping the bow on that string. And again, I've got instant control of things, so I'm effectively arranging this on the fly. So this is imagining me as the conductor. I'm busy pointing to the double basses, and I've made everyone else go quiet, and we're hearing just the double bass. So I can rearrange things, put everything back together. I don't like that gong, so let's you notice that these aren't playing, so I need to set those going. So we've got a loop here, it's a 4-bar loop. It's a useful way of demoing things, it's a useful way of building stuff up. So let's stop it. And yes, you can now see at the bottom one of the synthesizer virtual instruments. So this is one that's a bit like the thing we started with, except this one gives you more fine-grained control of stuff. Instead of marshalling 32 sound generators, this one only does 2, but you have more control over them. There's less of that random warbling up and down. Okay. Next thing I'm going to show you is this one. No, I don't want to save it. So it's now busy loading a whole load of new stuff. Right, okay. So this time we've got some chords that are playing very low down there. And I can control the bringing in of each of the things. So here's a tap and a click. Look at that. So there's some strings. Let's go a bit more. Put some more strings in. So there's some violas there. Pizzicato strings. And some slow violins. What it's doing here is not repeating the same 4 bars. You notice that in the track we're looking at, there are 5 bars. So this one is playing 5 bars, whereas all of the other tracks are playing 4. So the players for the 3rd track are playing effectively an extra bar each time. Everyone else, some people are playing 7s. So this is a piece of music where just those things generate stuff which takes a long while to repeat. A lot of music is generated this way. Let's fade that out. So in the role of the conductor, the arranger, and sometimes you let the individual virtual instruments and so on have a bit of autonomy, or you let them play at different timings to other people. So yes, you can be the conductor, the composer, and the arranger, but you can also build in stuff where, as I say, there's a little bit of autonomy. So what happens in the real world when you're scoring a movie? So there'll be a brief pause while I open up a huge project. Okay. So what you should see now is there's a video screen, and there's a completely different screen with loads of stuff happening that looks like we've turned everything we've just been doing on its side. And so now the tracks that we're talking about run horizontally instead of vertically. So what I'm going to do here is make it so that, right. The video that we've got here is from season 3 of Westworld, and there was a competition to do the soundtrack for a particular chase sequence. So what I'm going to show you is what you get when you're doing the soundtrack to a piece of movie or TV like this. So if I played this, it might be loud because this one sometimes goes loud. I may have to jump backwards and forwards. So let's.
Why the f are we stopping?
Get down.
And you notice that all you hear is the dialogue, the sound effects, and there's no music. What our job is to produce the music for that. So let's look at what we've got here. So I'll leave the original stuff in, and let's unsolo it. There's various bits and pieces here that I've added in. So let's start listening to it from the beginning this time.
Verified. Enable semi-automatic control. Disable safety features. Maximum speed. Go.
And let's stop it there. So what you've got happening is here on each of these tracks is one of the sounds that you heard. So right at the very beginning there were two noises to indicate that something was starting. So if we solo one of those, go back to the beginning. From cinematic percussion, just to indicate that something interesting is happening. If we go back again. So more cinematic percussion, just some drums. The other thing that we have happening is every time the screen goes black and white, that guy is having problems with his brain, and so every time it jumps to black and white, you can see that because it goes black and white, but you need something to accompany that, and so I've got a noise which is made using that thing that we had right at the very beginning. So that strange virtual instrument that made all those sweepy noises is what I use to make the sound of a guy whose brain is doing something strange. So let's listen to just that plus the sound, the basic sound. Oh, that's atmospheric. Wrong bit. Yeah, that's just an atmospheric noise. So you notice again that I'm using arrangement here to control what we hear. So if I look here, right, I need this one. Right, let's go back to the beginning and listen. So you won't hear anything on any of the other tracks because I'm listening to just this one. So there's the noise when it went black and white. If we keep watching, we don't. Yep, definitely something wrong. So yes, we're not hearing the actual basic dialogue and sound effects. Oh, coming up there. See more black and white again, and then we change to a different sound for the sound of the vehicles. So there. So yes, something's definitely wrong with inside his head. If we go up to the top, we've got some other bits and pieces happening, and we should recognize some of those. If I go back to the beginning again, we'll listen to this bit here. Oh, we would if I could go back to the beginning. Right, silence. So to introduce things, you've got that little motif, and that motif is repeated in various ways. Having motifs for people is the way that a lot of film music used to be constructed. That's tended to go out of fashion as time has gone by. And so you sometimes get things where people, each particular person has a theme, or each location has a theme. John Williams is good at that, for instance, but the modern trend is not to do that sort of thing. So Hans Zimmer is someone who tends to do big overall stuff that doesn't necessarily follow the location or the people, etc., etc. So what you can see in here, so if we look at this one here, so here you can see that there's this red line that's changing the volume of something. So it starts off loud and gradually goes quiet. So there's what, 35 dB of change there. So this is a bit like the conductor starting out indicating that something should be loud and then indicating that it should go quiet. So this is conducting on the level of each of these little virtual instruments. So those red lines that you can see are controlling the volume of each of those virtual instruments. In fact, we can actually see that happening if I jump to here, right? Or we would if I hadn't soloed it wrong. So it should be getting quieter and quieter and quieter, which it is. So it's still going down. I've lost the red line for some reason, but yes, it's still there somewhere. Yeah, and it's now disappearing. So all the way through here, you've got individual control over things, and so let's look at where is it? Synth Bank. Yeah. Right. Let's go to here. Right. Change to this one. So there, I've got a noise that's for the motorbike and the car. So you've got whooshing noises. but there's several components. So once again, you're into this thing where you're arranging things. So let's go. Oh, I'm out of sync with the video. Right. So there's a snare drum that's used for every time that the bike does something. So yes, it's another motif. I like motifs, so I'm somewhat running against the grain here. So let's try again. So very repetitive. One of the interesting things about listening to soundtracks is that as opposed to orchestral composition, where it's complicated, it has melodic and rhythmic elements and so on, an awful lot of the stuff that you get for soundtracks is not sophisticated. It's very simple, it's very repetitive, and it's the arrangement of things that matters. So it's that layering effect that has the total effect. So let's follow the motorbike. Oops. Oh, I apologize for the swearing. I should have said that. Oh, now it's repeating it.
All right, I need you.
Right.
Drop in, intersect, maximum
Right.
speed.
So you've got the percussion ready
Arm
for the
charges
snare.
now.
In the background here, you've got that whirring
Accelerate.
noise.
Acceleration at 90%.
More.
94%.
More.
98%.
Stop.
And so on. One of the things I want to do is go back in the video.
Maintain speed.
Maintaining speed.
No. Oh yes, this will do. Right. So
Point and shoot.
there's the gong. Here's the noises. So the noises are going to get loud here. Now they disappear again. We're going to fade out as we get some
Police
real
ahead.
noises.
Maintain speed.
Maintaining speed.
Here now,
Sharp left.
we're going
Now.
to get that noise back again. Here it comes. And we're about to get major event that's coming up here. Right, so look at this bit where it lifts up. Watch what happens on the video.
Hold on.
So we're now tracking what's happening inside the video. We're about to get explosion. Boom. Everything disappears. We get silence. Except for some atmospheric noise. Oh, I apologize for the
All right, I
swearing
need
again.
you. Drop in, intersect, maximum speed.
And that's where the bike comes in. So you have the percussion
Arm
that's
charges now.
telling you that something new is happening. So there's the scene break.
Accelerate.
Acceleration at 90%.
More.
94%.
And if we carry on, when the scene ends, right, watch what happens. So you know that the bike's coming, even though you can't see it, because you've got the snare drum again doing the same sort of sound as it did earlier on. So when the bike first appears, we've got that motif, and here it is again, even though it's happening off camera. So you can't see it, but you know that it's coming because in the soundtrack, sorry, in the effects, you can hear it gradually approaching from the left, but you have the snares there to show you that it's coming. So if you watch the thing without any of the sound at all, then it's all flat. So that bit with the missile, when it goes up and you see the view as it comes down and homes in on the back of the car, without that, it's just a flat picture. You add in all of that movement by having it so that the background sounds move. You have the thing with the snare drum to tell you that the thing's coming back in. There's all sorts of other things. So go here. So watch what happens. A gong, and a gong. So there are three things happen where she takes the bullet, she loads it into the gun, and then she prepares the gun. And so you have the rule of three. And there's another thing later on where you have the same sound again, because that's when something significant happens. So you prepare something and then finish it, and you can see that actually the same sort of thing is happening in lots of places. So here, for instance, you've got a whole set of stuff and then a closing bit. Here there's a whole set of stuff and then it closes, and the frequency gradually drops off, preparing to have all of this stuff here as he gets all of those strange noises in his head. And those noises mostly disappear except there, right at the very end, where it just comes back just to remind us that... Yeah, except this time it doesn't go black and white. And then it fades out to the end titles. So that's how you take a whole set of virtual instruments, take a piece of video that has got only dialogue and sound effects, and gradually turn it into something where, as you saw with the bit with the missile, all of that movement and so on is there because it's been added in by the music. Each of the things that you see here has been put in because there's something happening at that point. There, for instance, we've got where the bike starts up. That's the snare motif as it disappears. Here's the snare stuff again as it reappears, and that's where it crashes. And you've got that noise in the background that's going up and down every time it's doing it. So all of the things that you hear are placed there because there's a cue at that point where you need something to happen. There's this track here at the back is that atmospheric noise, and there's some more atmospheric noise here that just give you the underpinning. So you don't need to fill all of the space with sound all the time. Just as in the track at the very top, which is the actual dialogue and sound effects, that's not completely full of things. Silence is good. And so it's a blend between what's happening in that original musicless stuff and the stuff with the music. So let's go back to the beginning and watch it again. Not sure I can make it any. No, I'll leave it the same size so that you can follow along with what's happening. Okay, so you should now be much better armed with me having explained things to see what's going on. I'll talk over it, I'm afraid. That's all right, no? There's that noise for the black and white.
Enable semi-automatic control. Disable safety features. Maximum speed. Go.
The strings speed up. And louder. It's a chase, so we're going to have some chasey stuff. But we're not going to fall into the trap of having drums and percussion, because that would be silly. She's thinking. Oh, see how when his eyes changed, the sound changed?
We need distance. Head south.
So the sounds change as they go round the corner. See, there's something coming up here. Ah, yes, here we go. Right, so this is the high view. Without sound, this just looks like a view from a drone, and it's not connected to this. So the reveal tells you it's significant. And where's the third one? There.
No. It's not.
Almost nothing happening at the moment in the soundtrack, just a bit of background. So there's now some sound for the car.
Point and shoot.
There's the gong to tell us that he's got the thing that's loaded with that ammunition again. And he's still not feeling right, which is why you get that brain noise.
Police ahead. Maintain speed.
Maintaining speed.
Sharp left.
Nothing happening.
Now.
Sound effects again. Some background coming up. So now we've got the missile. Silence again.
I missed. Hold on.
Then we follow the missile. So it drops in pitch as it drops down, then we get the explosion. Just background noise again, out here.
All right, I need you. Drop in, intersect, maximum speed.
And so now we have the bit with the bike. So we know it's different because we've now got the percussion.
Arm charges now.
It's in a different location. Snares as it disappears off the screen.
More.
94%.
More.
98%.
And silence.
Stop.
Or silence in the music track anyway, because there's plenty happening and you need to hear the dialogue. So, where's that bike? You can hear it. There it is. And you know it says bike because we've got the snare drum. But his brain's kicking in. And it's the end. And we go into the finals, to the credits. So there you go. You take the pictures, you decide what the cues are, you then put the sounds against those cues, you then build up the interchange between the speech and the sound effects and the music, so that every time someone's speaking, it's not drowned out, so you don't get complaints from people. You make it so that there's signposting of things. So with the bike, for instance, you know that the bike is coming. When she's loading up the gun with that ridiculously large bullet, you know that it's significant because it's signposted with the three gongs, and at the beginning it has all those pizzicato strings instead of having a percussive soundtrack, because pizzicato strings give you this sense of acceleration and movement without having to have something that's tied to lots of drumming and etc. etc. And so that's how I take a piece of video and make it so that it's got all of the stuff that you normally never listen to. It's just part of the experience. And so without knowing what's going on, you just assume that that's how things are. And unfortunately, they're not. They're produced by people who tend to have lots of virtual instruments at their beck and call, and yes, that's the sort of thing. What's interesting is that the competition that this was part of, the music soundtrack that won was an 80s style chiptune. So it was very, very bleep type sounds. So not the sort of sophisticated modular synthesis sound that I had, and not the orchestral stabs, and no snare drum for the motorbike. It was completely different. And so, yes, there were several, what was it, 10,000 entries or something, every one of them completely different, because everyone looks at something, pulls out different cues, puts different sounds against them, etc., etc. But most of the cues that you've got would be very, very similar across all of them. One final thing that I was going to do was, I've got to do a new share. If I can find it. Where are we? Find the right screen. I can't find the right screen. Great. I've got too many screens here that it can find. Let me go back. Ah, right, that's why. Right. All right. I need to persuade it to play something. No, that's wrong. All right. Okay. All right. So on another screen, I'm busy fighting the system to get to the thing that I want. Right. Let's do that and that. Come on, stop. Yeah, right. Okay. Right. Now I should be able to find it and share that screen. So new share. Yes, here we go. Right. When I said about the way that you record instruments, it sounds really interesting. It sounds wow. And so, yeah, lots of people think that it's going to be really interesting and so on. And so here's a video where you can actually see the process of recording the sounds for a virtual instrument. And it's not what you expect. So let's start this.
We want it to sound purposely quite parochial at first, and then it just gets super dark. So I may kind of work with you a little bit as we get in to kind of do some really scary stuff.
Yes, these people are working, and that note that you can hear is the note that they're recording. And these are the musicians, and they really liked what they did. Okay, so if you can imagine, there's a process where you're making a sound, so that scrapey, scratchy sound, single note. If you repeat that for all of the notes that you can get that work with those instruments, you might then do it quieter, you might then do it louder. And so all of those, and it's probably tens or maybe up into the hundreds of sounds, those are what goes into making the virtual instrument that is then used to reproduce that sound in something like the workstation that I showed you, to make it sound like those people are actually playing it live. They're not, in most cases, and so that's the way that it works. So everything that you've seen was done just on a laptop. There's no big set of anything that it's connected to other than Zoom and my microphone. Everything was done here. And at this point, I think it's probably a good time to see if there are any questions. So let's me stop sharing. Right. Okay.
Right, questions are back in that corner, Martin. Let's have a little look.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
you ready? I'm going to read them out to you.
Yeah, go.
I'm going to go from the closest backwards. Did the studio provide the separated sound effects and audio tracks, or a single stereo guide track? And that one's from Davin Bateman.
It varies, but usually what you get for this sort of thing is a mix down of the speech and the sound effects. Sometimes you'll get just the speech. Sometimes they haven't added in all of the sound effects yet. One of the things that people don't realize about not so much TV, but certainly movies and all animated films, is that there are no sound effects. The sound effects are all added in afterwards. So there's a thing called a Foley stage, which is a recording area where you have lots of squares, and in each of the squares you have sand and gravel and carpet and etc., and you have various props like doors and doorbells and etc., and every single noise that you hear in an animated movie has to be added on afterwards. And so that's very time consuming, because every footstep has to be done. Every time you touch something, every time you turn a door handle, every time you pick up a glass, all of those things all have to be added. So yeah, sometimes you get just speech. Sometimes you get a more completed thing. For a competition like this, then yes, you've got the speech and the sound effects, and that guides you a lot. Otherwise, you're having to read what's going on in the picture a lot more. But yeah, so yes.
Right, next question.
Yeah.
This one is from Mike Dommett, and it says, do you spend all your time working on soundtracks for video, or do you compose or record other music too?
I do lots of things. I spend a lot of time making things like that little virtual instrument that we saw right at the beginning. So I like making things that make sounds and unusual ways of controlling them. So this idea that you can just put frequencies, make them swoop up and down and etc., in a way that is easy to see how it works and easy to control, is not straightforward. So I like making things that do that. I also like a little bit of composition, although everything that you've seen is much more arrangement than composition. There's, as I said, the standard thing about film composers is that there's maybe 1 or 2% of composition. Everything else is arranging. So yeah, the arranger has not died and disappeared. The arranger is still here, and that's what the people who produce things like the soundtracks to movies are still doing. So yeah, I do all of these things and probably more.
Very luckily, the lovely David F has also added a link into your sound synthesizing sampler.
Oh yes, yes. There's a book that I wrote. It's an undergraduate textbook on sound synthesis and sampling. So yes. What I was going to do,
that would be a great thank you. Would be to support that. So we've got,
I was going to do another blog entry with loads of links. So links to all the videos you've seen, links to the competition, etc., etc. So yes, all of those.
Fantastic. So we'll make sure that gets sent out to these guys as well. So next question. Great presentation, Martin. Thank you. That's from Nathan Stone. What's the spec of your machine allowing you to run multiple instances on Spitfire VSTs?
It's not very impressive. It's an i7 running at 3 and a bit gigs with 16 gigs of RAM. So yeah, it's not humongously powerful. I've got an i9 that I use for other stuff, but yeah, this was a reasonably mid to upper end laptop, but not amazing.
Next question from Martin Bishop. What do you think about ML generated music? Does it have legs?
Lots of work going on in machine learning at the moment. There's quite a few projects that produce very, very good music that sounds almost like human beings composed it. So I'm still on the fence in that I quite like that human element, although in that example where I showed a bit of autonomy, where you had some of the tracks playing 4 bars, some of them playing 5 bars, some of them playing 7 bars, that's the sort of thing where you're letting serendipity take over. And so AI and machine learning generated stuff is really the next stage on from that. So I still think that it's nice to have arrangement done by a human being, because they tend to be good at understanding what's going on in the picture. But over time, I think AI might get a lot of that as well. So yeah, I think we'll see more and more music that is generated by computers with less and less control by the human beings.
Fantastic, thank you. So Andy Boland has asked, fellow Ableton users, is that how you pronounce it?
Ableton, yeah, it's fine.
Ableton.
Unless you're German. If you're German, you pronounce it entirely differently. Everyone else in the world pronounces it Ableton, but the Germans, of course, pronounce it differently. But no, it's known as Ableton. Yeah.
Okay. What was the?
Yes, it was done using Max for Live. Yes.
Have you got that? What was the instrument you made at the start using Max for Live?
Yes. Yeah, it was made using. Oh, it's called Bankosk. If you go to my website, there's a whole live performance using just that. Yeah. Yes, so you're absolutely right, Andy. Yes, it was made with Max for Live, which is a programming language specifically for making things like virtual instruments and so on. So yeah, I do quite a lot of that. I've got over 100 Max for Live devices on maxforlive.com. I've also done quite a few virtual instruments. So there's a website called pianobook.co.uk, which does virtual instruments, sampled ones, where it's a sample of something. And I've got 3 or 4, maybe 5 on there. So the most recent one is something that you can't do in a modular synthesizer, or in fact most ordinary synthesizers, because it's got lots of sound generators. So the thing that we saw in Max for Live has 32 of those sound generators. The one that you can get on Piano Book has 9,216. So that makes a very interesting, very rich, very thick sound. And it's the sort of thing that you can only do by recording something and then making it available in a virtual instrument. So there are very few synthesizers that have 9,216 sound generators inside them. Even I haven't got one with that many in. So yes, but with a virtual instrument, you can make something like that.
Fantastic. That's the last question, Martin. Is there anybody else? Any other questions they want to
Any
ask?
live questions?
Oh, there's another one here. When
Oh.
will the recording be available?
Actually, I did ask a question before. Hi, Martin. Very cool, very cool. This reminds me of the good old days of MIDI synthesizers. And this is is it a type of FM synthesizers in a sense?
There's lots of different types of things. So here I was using sampled instruments. I was using an analog, a virtual analog synthesizer. I was using a wavetable synth to do the chimey sort of sounds, and so on. There wasn't very much FM in there, but yeah, that was just because in this case I didn't. But yes, MIDI, which is the standard way of representing notes and things digitally, is the basis for all of those piano rules that you saw me using. So underneath you've got things that say the note starts here, the note ends here, etc., etc. And those the red lines that show the volume of things, those are what's known as MIDI controllers, which is ways of controlling the volume and other things. So yeah, there's a lot of embedded MIDI stuff here, and that's deeper sort of arranger sort of functionality, maybe even down to composer level functionality. So yeah, I was trying to keep it higher up at the arranger, because that's where music to picture really sits.
And the wavetable, is it because how much has moved on since the days of, let's say, Yamaha XG and the Roland MT32? Or have we now become more software defined, and the good old days more like ROM and hardware defined?
You still get wavetable. The trouble with wavetable is that the interpolation between things tends to take lots of processing power. And so wavetables are a very good way of using up CPU. So yeah, people tend to look for solutions that don't do all of that interpolation. So yeah, it's the usual thing, that it's the filtering, the interpolation, the smoothing of stuff that takes the time. The raw processing happens very, very quickly. So yes, nothing really changes. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey Martin, it's Nigel Foden here.
Hello.
Just a quick chip in, really. It's not a question, but there's a chap called Bear McCreary who I noticed initially doing the soundtrack for Battlestar Galactica. I was a big fan of that and just looked it up. Yeah. And actually, just to say, this stuff goes the other way. His work, which is like your own there, all sort of synthesized to support the soundtrack of the series, was so successful that they actually formed a real orchestra and took the Battlestar Galactica orchestra on the road. So you can look up sort of YouTubes of that, and yeah, genuinely people wanted to hear it so much they said, right, we'd actually love to go and see that stuff live. So they've taken it out of the studio and the synthetics and actually then sort of reverse engineered a real orchestral composition for it.
Yeah, it's
just, good to see it going in both directions.
It's fascinating that orchestras are very busy doing not only sample library stuff, so there's a lot of stuff that they get where they're doing those, but also they do lots of stuff where, as you say, they're reproducing something that was produced using virtual instruments. So good example is Hans Zimmer. When Hans Zimmer goes on tour, he's one of these people that has masses of computers and huge arrays of virtual instruments in the studio. When he goes live on tour, he has a huge orchestra and a huge choir, and half of a rock band. And so, yes, it's fascinating that the computers themselves get replaced by live performers for live performance. And so, yeah, in some cases, you can kind of replace some of the functionality of an orchestra with a computer, but you can also replace a computer with a real orchestra. And it happens both ways.
I wonder if the robots are worried about losing their jobs to pesky humans. That's great. Great talk, Martin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I'm gonna close this down then, Martin. Right, I've just got another link into the chat, which is around the other events that are upcoming. So we have, for some weird reason, there's an event on the pub for this Thursday, but it won't be the Thursday Robot this week. It will be Ipswich Tech Drinkabout, which is listed on the events list. And on Thursday, we have a Sims talk. Sims is Suffolk Internet Marketing Specialists. Your best you standing out in a crowded marketplace with effective personal branding. And then if you carry on down that link, you can see the three main groups that we run are Sync Ipswich, Sims, which is small business education, and then Suffolk Developers, which is here. We've got booked loads and loads of offers of talks. And we're going to try our next mission. We're booked up to about November, but our next mission is to go and get some really exciting people. So if you've got anybody you want us to chase down and beg to give a talk, let us know. We're happy to help. That's it. Thank you very much for coming. We will take the recording of this event. I might run something where I do a screen grab of a Suffolk Developers talk, which has got no faces on it, and then there's a Sims one where it's the total opposite, and everybody's kind of hi, lots of emojis all evening. But it's really nice to have this broad spectrum of audience. We record all of the talks and we put them straight onto the ISTN website. So if you look under the blog, you'll see, hi Nigel, you'll see the content on there, so you can revisit it time and time again. We're hoping that becomes a decent body of work to represent all of the great stuff that goes on in Suffolk. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye bye bye.